La primera charla va a correr a cargo de Mogens Schou. Tiene una dilatada carrera en el mundo de la pesca y en el sector alimentario. Bueno, voy a esperar un poco que...
Good morning.
Morning. Morning. Hi. Hi. Yeah. I will perform now a brief presentation of you, and then you can start. Okay. Bueno, como decía, Mogens Schou tiene una dilatada carrera en el mundo de la pesca y del sector alimentario. Ha sido consejero del ministro de Alimentos danés, director del Ministerio de Pesquerías, jefe de sección del Ministerio de Industria, y bueno, ha trabajado en cuestiones gubernamentales relacionadas con la gestión y la política de pesquerías y acuicultura. Además, ha cubierto todos los aspectos relacionados con este tema, desde políticas de mercado, cuestiones financieras y científicas, gestión, etc. Además, ha concebido la gestión de cuotas, que forma parte hoy en día de la Política Pesquera Común, y de hecho participó en la primera negociación y las revisiones posteriores. Actualmente es representante para Baltic Sea 2020, consejero de BioC3, y además es socio de AquaMind, del que nos hablará ahora un poco en su charla titulada Equilibrio entre la implementación de la política pesquera común y la creación de valor de las industrias. Además, él nos ha pedido que dirigirse antes de empezar la charla al público, así que le voy a ceder la palabra. So you can start when you're ready.
I'm ready now. Good morning, Santander, and thank you very much for this introduction. Have you noticed how products and services develop today? They are produced more efficiently, more energy friendly, and with less environmental impact. And they offer completely new solutions that we did not think of. This is not a result of public regulation. Public regulation sets boundaries, but private entrepreneurship produce innovation and solutions. So this fishing difference. Why do we regulate every step of the fishing process, and how do we choose another way? I will put my presentation on. I hope you can see the presentation here. I will give you my views on how we can move from a regulated system, a regulated fishery, to a fishery where innovation and new ideas can thrive. And by the way, this is where I live. This is the fishing harbor, very close to my home. Fisheries policy, I think, is very simple. It is for the politicians to define and control the amount of fish that can be fished. But we have to look at how we can break down this objective to policy decisions and to private actions that allows for entrepreneurship to develop. So I'm speaking about the utilization of fish stocks. I'm not here speaking about how you allocate the quotas between the fishermen. This is not a part of my presentation, but this, of course, is also very important. Let's see. Yes. The first point is that the new common fisheries policy, it's based on the TAC quota system. It's not based on effort regulation or territorial user rights or anything else. It's primarily based on TACs and quotas, and it is based on accountability. So the new CFP says that we should fish the stocks at MSY level, maximum sustainable yield. We need to get a high yield from our fish stocks. Also, and this is very new from the that is very new in the new policy, there is an obligation to have full catch accountability. If you take a look at the regulation, Article 15, it says that all catches must count against quotas and all catches must be landed. That is the discard ban. So this is very new in the policy, as you of course all know. I think it's important to understand that maximum sustainable yield is not it is not a concept to protect fish stocks. It's a concept to ensure that you get an economic yield, a yield in amount of fish that can be that can generate wealth in fishing communities, and therefore it is extremely important that you apply the MSY objective in respect of the characteristics you have in your fishing waters. It's necessary for fleets and industry to adapt, and I think that the science work that is going on and that you are doing here, it is very important to influence the development of the MSY. Of course, we have a rather clear formulation of the MSY rule in the CFP, in the basic regulation. But I think as we become wiser and we learn about the difficulties, especially in the mixed fisheries, I think that in some years, perhaps 4 or 5 years, it will be a good idea for the Council and the European Parliament to adapt the MSY rule a bit, to give more room for a regional approach and a regional application of the MSY principle. So I think when you move into projects, as the project you are into, it's necessary not only to think in terms of how do we implement the present policy, but also think in terms of how could this policy become even better in a few years when we have more knowledge about the situation. My focus, my personal focus, and of course this is also part of the new policy, that is that you have to ensure that all catches count on the quotas. It's a natural capital principle that when you take something out from the natural capital, take fish out, then it is necessary to manage how much you take out. And if you do not have full catch accountability, you will not get MSY. It will be a dream. You will not get the right data, and you will not get good advice from the biologists. If you do not manage the total outtake, then you need to continue with prescriptive management on gear constructions, closed areas, effort control of capacity in the fleet, and so forth and so on. Also, I think it is important to acknowledge that when you do have discards and unaccounted catches, some groups in the fishing fleets are paying for this, because discards leads to reduced TACs, and all fishing vessels, all fishermen have to contribute to this payment of the TAC reductions when we have the advices from the International Council for the Exploration of the Sea, iSEAS. So we have the TAC, we have the MSY, and we need to apply the instrument of catch accountability. So how do we ensure this? I believe that we do need effective documentation of all catches, and I myself have been a strong proponent for camera documentations and CCTV documentations. But of course, this is not a solution for all fishing vessels, and certainly not for all small fishing vessels. In my harbor, we just saw the picture here, vessels below 10 meters, and 2 of those vessels, they actually have cameras on board, so it is a possibility. So I suggest that, that full documentation is considered for some part of the fleet, the larger vessels, to have a full documentation of catches from these vessels and to have reference fleets, so you can see what are the catch compositions in documented fisheries. Then, according to the new basic regulation, you will have to assess the unaccounted catches for segments of the fleets not having full documentation, and it is necessary to set aside quotas to cover for unaccounted catches. This, of course, will give an incentive to reduce unaccounted catches along the way, improve monitoring, and also improve fishing practices to reduce this deduction. So, I think it is very important to establish this, and I'll come back to some of the reasons. But if you have full accountability, instead of the system where you throw out fish if you don't have a quota, you have a completely new policy paradigm. And the question here is, what are the new challenges? There are certainly big challenges. What are the benefits? And what are the opportunities? Let's have a look at the policy challenges. I think the main policy challenge is to minimize the choke species problem. So especially in mixed fisheries, if you have fished the quota for just one of the species, you will have to close the whole mixed fishery, and that is not a viable solution. You need to find solutions to this problem. The first thing, of course, is that when you have a choke species issue, it is very important to have the correct biological advice. It doesn't work if you have a very big stock and the biological advice says that the TAC should be on a lower level than is actually possible. So better advice, and it is also necessary to get real-time data into the advice. Today, much of the advice coming from iSEAS on TACs are based on data that are perhaps 1.5 years old, and that is not good enough in the new system. Also, as I said, when the Council fixes the TACs, it is necessary to respect mixed fisheries and be flexible. And I have noticed that some NGOs are very occupied with the MSY concept, and it is important, it's part of the policy. But it is also important to fix the TACs for the various stocks that are part of mixed fisheries in a way that allow fishermen to fish as much of their quotas as possible. And actually, this is also part of the basic regulation. It's not specified very much, but it is stated in the basic regulations that management decisions have to take account and be aware of the, as they say, the phenomenon of choke species. So fixing the TAC at the right levels in mixed fisheries is important. The second thing is that we have relative stability, and relative stability, of course, creates some boundaries and some inoptimal allocation of quotas. And I think we already have a lot of quota swaps in the EU between member states, but I think it is necessary to perhaps to enter into more long-term bilateral agreement on quota swaps. One example could be that Spain has a lot of opaque quotas in Area 7, but you do not really have quotas of haddock. And here, of course, it would be a good idea to have a long-term bilateral agreement or multilateral agreement with the UK and Ireland and France to see how you can cover those bycatches you have of haddock in pig fishery. Then it is also necessary to have flexibility in quota allocation within the member states. And of course, here we do move a bit into the discussion of allocating the fishing rights. But it is necessary to have transferability. I can give you one example. In Denmark, fishermen can be a member of the pool. We have fishing pools. And I think about 80–85% of all fishermen are members of these pools. And the pool will allow the fishermen, for example, to fish for nephrops, Norway lobster, and to get bycatches of cod. And he can keep that cod on board, he can land it, and he can sell it, even if he does not have a quota for his vessel. But then in the pool that works as an internet home banking system, it's possible for him to go in and swap or lease or buy quotas in a very flexible way. So as long as he can go into this home banking system and buy his quota for, lease his quota for cod before the end of the quota year, then he is covered. And that gives a great deal of flexibility. You might see that there are some problems in this system, but actually there are no problems, and we have been working with this system for the past 9 years now. So national quota system needs to allow for some flexibility and transferability. But these are policy challenges. It is for the politicians that have now set the TSCs, that have now decided on full accountability. It is for the politicians to be sure that you set the TSCs, that you make swaps, that you establish flexibility. That is necessary for them to do. But there are also fishermen's challenges. And basically it is my thinking that when we speak of fisheries management, we should not think of what the politicians do. We should think of what the fishermen do. Fisheries management is about how you manage your fishery in order to get the optimal result out of the quotas you have been allocated. That is for the fishermen. And that, of course, also entails a lot of problems in relation to adapt your fishing in time, in space, area, what technology you use and what method you use. And you have to do that in order to minimize the choke species problem, to ensure you get the right sizes of the fish and the right value of the fish. So that is necessary. If we look at the present system, where it has been a part of the EU policy to discard fish, then the fact is that vessels and fleets that have based their fishery on a high level of discards, now they have to count these discards into their vessel quota. And it is necessary for them to find new methods, and they have to adapt. They can disobey and policy can collapse, or they can simply disappear, and fishermen with other types of fishing, other traditions and other technologies will then develop in the fishery. So coming back to this choke species problem, which is very important, it is important in the North Sea, but it is certainly very important and I would say much more complex in your areas, in the Bay of Biscay, in the southern areas, and of course in the Mediterranean. But the solution to choke species is not, I think, just to keep on fishing in the mixed fisheries, throw out the fish, and don't count it, and you know see what happens. Then, repeating myself, I would rather set the TSCs a little bit higher. Of course, you have to be above the precautionary level, but set the TSCs a little more flexible, and then be sure that you really count what you catch. But my point here is set the framework for the fishermen and allow the fishermen to choose where, when, how, and with which gear to fish. That is for the fishermen, and that is the management the fishermen should do, not the politicians. So if you have full catch accountability, of course, it is not necessary to deduct discards from TACs, so you can have quota uplifts, and the quota uplifts, perhaps for some fishing vessels that have been used to discard a lot, it will be difficult for them. But for vessels, perhaps especially vessels with passive gear, they may have a benefit with these quota uplifts. So that is one benefit. The other benefit is that here you move from an input management or input policy where you decide how the production should take place. You decide the input in terms of type of gear, mesh sizes, grids in the gear, and all technical issues, bycatch rules, minimum reference sizes, and all these rules. Once you have a policy where you have full catch accountability, and you know what is the result on the fishing mortality by these quotas, then of course you should leave it to the fishermen to decide how, where, when, and by which technology to fish. It is a bit of a novel thought, but I really believe in it, and I think it is necessary for politicians and also for scientists and even for fishermen, having been used to be caught in this system for many years, to think out of the box. And I believe that in many fisheries you can allow for free choice of gear, given that you have full catch accountability. So we have some challenges. We have some. Well, I think perhaps I would go back a little to the benefits on this results-based management, because there is a paper on the table right now, and that is a paper with a proposal from the Commission for a revision of the technical framework. And in this revision, the Commission suggests that the new technical framework regarding the rules for gear and so forth, that you have some basic framework rules, and then leave it to the regionalization and regional decisions to, so to speak, to fill out the more detailed rule on how gears, closed areas, bycatch rules, and so forth, how they should be constructed. I think it is the outline of the proposal is good. I have some comments to the proposal. I will send it to the Secretariat after my presentation here. I have a number of comments to this. Basically, I have on the overall thing, I have a few comments. First of all, if you have full catch accountability, you have the choke species problem, and you have it now, then we cannot wait until 2020, perhaps 2022, until we have a decision on the technical framework, and this decision has been transformed into regional policies and new regional rules. The choke species problem is there now. We have to be flexible with regard to technical rules, and we have to find solutions right now. And I think that one of the solutions, and that is a part of my comments to the proposal, one of the solutions is to allow for much more trials, practical commercial trials among fishermen. Of course, coupled with scientists that can monitor what happens and how things develops. But we need a much larger window in the technical regulations in order to allow for fishermen to make trials and use new types of technologies and this is rather urgent. The fisheries policy it's not aligned. I mean, you have a new policy on the TAC quotas, but you have the very old policy on technical regulation. You have to close that gap quickly. Then, as I said, there are some opportunities when we finally get order in the House it is important, I think, to have to show that you fish in a sustainable way, because we are talking about competition, we are talking about the market, so an opportunity is, of course, to qualify for any market in the world. Of course, I know that in Spain, a lot of the fish is consumed in your own country, but still you have a very important export. Also, we have some companies, for example, MSC, Marine Stewardship Council, and personally, I think MSC has done a fantastic work. They've done a fantastic job, and they have contributed to sustainable practices. But on the other hand, MSC, it's rather expensive to use, it's rather circumstantial, it's difficult, it takes time to get certifications. If you have full accountability according to the new EU policy, and you can show that you're managing the quotas you have for your country and for the individual vessels, and also if you comply with the rule that is already there on traceability, then you can show through the system that the fish that you have caught has been caught in a sustainable way, and you can show it all through the supply chain with this traceability system that all member states are obliged to have. In that case, I think it should be much easier, much cheaper, and much more transparent to demonstrate sustainable practices, and you may not necessarily need to have a third-party professional certification company assessing your products. So that is a possibility too. Another opportunity is balanced harvest. It is being discussed a lot, and I don't know in what direction it will go, but I think it is an interesting concept. In any event, I think it is an adverse policy to say we will only fish the very largest fish, always the very largest fish. I think it should be possible to fish a composition of fish sizes. And of course, I know that in Spain you have a market for small fish, small hake and other small fish. And I think as long as you're fishing on sustainable reference points with regard to the fishing mortality and balance of the sizes that you should take, then of course why should you not be able to also catch and land and sell small fish? And I think it's a strange situation now in the new policy where EU has said you have to count all your fish and you have to land all your fish, but you're not allowed to sell the small fish. That's an adverse situation. It simply doesn't. It's simply not a good idea. So that is an opportunity to have a more balanced outtake of the fish stocks. And then of course new opportunities. And there I go back to what we see happen. I will not mention Uber taxi or perhaps other very fancy things. But new technologies, new methods, and new ways of thinking, and new ways of linking things together offer a lot of opportunities, I think, also for making the fisheries more efficient and creating more value. So, what do I think we should do? I think we should establish a basis for a better MSY framework. This is an ongoing work. It's going on in your project. Also, the project called My Fish is working on this, and it will take some years until we find the right solution here. But it's very important to work on this. And here, in relation to the pressure we have from NGOs, one should be aware again that the EU has two approaches here. One approach is the precautionary approach, and that is in the regulation. This is extremely important. We must be sure that we keep our stocks on a sound basis. But then above that, we have the MSY approach, and the MSY approach is basically an economic approach. So you should not be so strict on MSY that you ruin some fisheries and ruin some economies. You have to need some flexibility. In my mind, what is the basis for all this? The basis for all progress that we can make, in my mind, that is catch accountability, to ensure full catch accountability. If you don't know what you catch, if you don't measure what you catch, you cannot manage the fisheries, and you cannot get free choice of gear, you cannot get the opportunities. This is my thinking, and this is what I believe in. So the third thing is to promote free choice of gear, and you can do that in large-scale trials. Make sure that we have the window in EU. I'm working for this myself, that we have a window in EU allowing for large-scale trials where fishermen can do things and not think too much about what are the rules and regulations on this type of gear, but think about how can I optimize my results given the quota I have. Then, of course, here, most of the time we speak of how to utilize the fish stocks we have. How can we do that? How do we get the most out of it? And this is a utilization aspect. We should also, of course, be aware that there are some species that we should not fish at all, protected species and habitats not on the utilization list. And here you may also have choke species problem and issues you have to deal with. And then in general, what to do is to, and especially for the fishermen, if the fisherman wants to manage their own fishery, innovate and reach out for new ideas and technologies. So this paper here was issued by the European Parliament only a few days ago. And there are some case stories from the Baltic Sea and from the northern waters, North Atlantic, North Sea, and also from the Bay of Biscay. And of course, and I have a deep respect for individual characteristics of sea basins. I mean, having a fisheries policy in the Baltic, it doesn't work in the Baltic, but it should not be very difficult because we have most of it is single species, and it shouldn't be so difficult. In the North Sea, it's much more difficult, but it's certainly possible to solve choke species problems and to have mixed fisheries in a good way. But I very much appreciate that in the Bay of Biscay and, as I said, in the Mediterranean, this is a big task, and therefore this is important to deal with. And also, to repeat myself, I think it is necessary to perhaps to expand the concept of MSY to include other ways of assessing the levels of or the amount of fish you can take. You can do it if you don't have a basis for analytical advice. You may do it by indicators, reference points, and so on. And actually, this is an approach that was recommended in an EU paper in 2013. I was a chairman for this work, and there's a link to this paper here. So I think that one has to look into this. In this paper, the authors that have been writing about the problems at the Bay of Biscay, they are saying, and I'm quoting, a discard ban must be accompanied by a suite of supplementary regulatory measures. I think they have made a very fine paper, but I disagree with this formulation. You have to be very careful. If you put more regulations into the fishery, it becomes the responsibility of public services, EU and Galicia regions to regulate on a bureaucratic level, and we shouldn't go in that direction. But it's also for the fishermen to ensure that we do not go in that direction. And to do that, they have to comply. They have to accept the basics of the CFP, full accountability. Yes. So the core principle. We are talking about sustainable use. We are not talking about protection. Sustainability is about utilization. And some NGOs have forgotten what Brundtland said in the Brundtland report many years ago. It is about utilization. But of course, it's a utilization that can endure. We do it in a good way for mankind. But from that concept follows that we must use the resource the best we can. We must define the outtake, we must account for what we take, and we must approve the way we do it. Thank you very much. I cannot be with you during the coffee break, but if there are any questions or comments here, I will be happy to comment. Thank you. That is a very good question. Of course, you know I cannot answer it, but what I can say is that I have read some papers on the choke species problem and the problem on adaptability. Especially the UK has done a fantastic work here, and that shows that that the choke species problems will be a great cost to UK fishermen. So there is a problem there. But the other hand, I also myself have experiences on how fishermen can adapt. So if you make a statistical analysis on basis of looking backwards and see what fishermen did in the past, then you do not take account of the fishermen's adaptability and dynamic approach. I can see that even in Danish fisheries, where we have made many changes, that immediately when you have a new ball game, then the fishermen, they can adapt in a very dynamic way. But I believe in dynamics. I believe that fishermen are creative and they can adapt. But I will not, on the other hand, I will not downturn or downsize that we have a serious problem here. And I will certainly not do it for your areas, because I'm not very, I don't have too much knowledge about the situation in your areas. So I have great respect of the problems you have. That was not a clear answer, but still, that is the way you have to go. You have to adapt, but also it's a combination of, you have to, I think it in terms of three levels. One level is you have to define the level of accept. So the fishermen and those who are going to live with this, they have to demonstrate a level of accept. Do you accept, for example, full catch accountability? Now, let's say you accept this is a part of the policy. Then the next step is, if you accept it, you will have to put demands to the politicians. And I can tell you that the Danish fishermen, when we spoke about the camera documentation and full accountability in Denmark, they actually said, well, we are prepared to move into that direction and we are prepared to adapt, but we want policy things in place first. For example, free choices of gear, better quota management, and so forth and so on. Thank you.